It is now official. The NBA is expanding to Seattle and Las Vegas. Yes, we got a lot of hoops to jump through. Yes, this is going to take a couple years. But still, as of this week, the NBA has officially announced they are moving ahead with Seattle and Vegas. And for someone like myself, who has waited 20 years for a team to come back here in Seattle, I think that jersey I got in the background, that's what I was wearing when the Sonics left 20 years ago. This is a big deal, certainly for us in Seattle. It's a big deal for Las Vegas. We can talk about that later. But it's also a really big deal for all 30 NBA teams. And that's because there is going to be an expansion draft, again, probably in 2 years. We'll get the exact timeline, hopefully this summer. But there is going to be an expansion draft coming. But in honor of the excitement that I have, the whole rest of the city of Seattle, I'm going to be doing an expansion draft this year. I did one last year. I said I would be doing it all the way up until Seattle actually got a team. We now actually will have a team, hopefully in the next couple of years. But still, every single year, I'm going to do my own mock expansion draft just to get a sense of what it would look like if the expansion draft was happening today. And I get it's not happening this year. I've already had people comment on other videos saying, expansion draft's not for a couple years. Why are we even talking about it? We're talking about it because it's fun. And for someone like me who owes his 10-year-old self an NBA team, I want to talk about as much of it as I can. So we're going to do a mock expansion draft. I'm going to split this up into 2 parts. This first video is just going to be the protections. And this is what's going to be probably most interesting for all 30 other fan bases, is what players do you protect in an expansion draft? And so if an expansion draft is happening today, who would those players be? We're going to go through all of that. Part 2 will come later, probably closer to this summer. I'll do the actual draft based on these protections. But I want to start with the protections because that's the most important and really most interesting part. The draft is fun, certainly for us in Seattle and Vegas, but the protections are fun for everybody. So we're going to go through all the protections. First, let me just quickly go over the rules because I see a lot of videos, a lot of articles, a lot of comments, not really understanding the rules. And even though we don't have the set expansion draft rules, those probably won't come until the expansion is official, probably in a couple of years. But we can assume what they're going to be based on past history. And I'm assuming, and what I'm going to be basing this expansion draft off of, is every team can protect up to 8 players. It's what it's been in the past. Can't imagine they're going to stray from that. Every player is eligible to be protected except for unrestricted free agents. And this is what always gets missed. If a player is an impending free agent, and particularly an impending unrestricted free agent, which basically means at the end of the year, they're free to go. The team has no rights over them. They can't be protected for obvious reasons, but everybody else can. Everybody else that the team has some control over is eligible to be protected, or more importantly, is eligible to be left unprotected. So that means restricted free agents. That means teams with a player or club option. All of those players are eligible, and you can only protect 8. You do have to leave one person unprotected. So for weird instances where a team has maybe, let's just say 7 players that are eligible, you have to let one go. So in that scenario, they can only protect 6, have to leave one guy open. And then one of the bigger rules, probably for a lot of teams, is only one player can get picked from your team. And that's a big one, especially for some of the teams we'll talk about. You're only at risk of losing one player. And in the past, that's just been one player total. There has been some debate, is that going to be one player per team? I can't imagine that's the case. I think it will just be set 8 players protected. You're only at risk for losing one player. So teams that have a lot of good players that are left unprotected, you're only at risk at losing one. So those are the rules. And if you're doing your own protections, if you're doing your own draft for this year, that's what you have to abide by. You can't just protect everybody. You can't protect unrestricted free agents, all of that. So now that we have the rules in place, let's go through the protections. And I'm going to go through each team, and we're going to pull up the first team in a second. A big part of protections and a big part of this conversation is going to be value and how valuable a player is to their team. And I talked about this in my NBA trade value rankings. You can check out that video if you want. But this isn't just the top 8 players. This isn't just the 8 best players. It's what teams will determine are their 8 most valuable players. And so there's kind of a good correlation between my trade value rankings and these protections in an expansion draft. A good example, if you have a really old, a really high paid, but talented player, yes, that player might be better for your team right now than your 20-year-old rookie who doesn't get a lot of playing time, hasn't really made that much of an impact. But if you compare these in an expansion draft, you're more than likely going to lean towards the 20-year-old than the 38-year-old who's on a bad contract, maybe puts up points for you. So it's, again, not just the best player, it's the value. And that has to do with age, that has to do with contract. And obviously, at the end of the day, it does have to do with how good you are. And we're going to talk through some examples. Some maybe more famous players might be left unprotected. Some others might be a conversation. But it's not just who's the best player right now. Lots of things to consider when we make these projections. So with that being said, let's throw up the first team, which is the Atlanta Hawks. I'll just go through what's here on the screen before we continue. All 15 players. Some teams have 14 players on their roster. The ones that are grayed out, they are not eligible. So as we said, those are the unrestricted free agents. For the Hawks, it's McCollum, it's Gabe Vincent, Landale, Caleb Houston. The rest of the guys, you have to pick 8 players to protect. And I'm not going to spend lots of time on every single player. This video is going to be a couple hours long if I do that. So for each team, I'm going to just give out the obvious ones. And for the Hawks, I think there's 4. It's Jalen Johnson, it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it's Okongwu, it's Daniels. We don't need to talk about why those guys are left unprotected. If you have a question why Jalen Johnson would be protected by the Hawks, this video might not be for you. If you genuinely don't know and want to have a conversation, you can put it in the comments. But it's obvious that a lot of these guys are going to be protected. I don't need to spend a lot of time. So for every team, I'm going to throw out the obvious ones. Don't need to talk about them. The harder part is then going to be figuring out the rest. And for the Hawks, 4 spots I've already taken. We got to protect 4 more. Reece Shea, I think he would be one of them. Yes, he's been disappointing, but his contract is decent. He hasn't been terrible. Hawks aren't going to just get rid of him this easily. Corey Kispert, they brought him over in a trade. He's on a solid contract. He's a solid player. I think they protect him. Then we look at some of the young guys. I think Asa Newell will get protected. He's under the books for the next few years. He's shown some promise that Atlanta just doesn't want to lose him. And then the 8th spot to me is going to go to Jonathan Kuminga, who is going to be a real topic of conversation in this real offseason without the expansion draft, what the Hawks do with him. I think he still has enough potential. They traded for him this year. I don't think they want to lose him. So he would get my last spot. That means guys like Mo Gay, who I really like. Keaton Wallace, I think is a solid pick. Buddy Hield, nice veteran. Some nice pieces, but those guys would be left unprotected. So that's kind of an example of all the teams. And we're going to go through this with every single team. This was the 8 protections for the Atlanta Hawks. Now going in alphabetical order, the Boston Celtics are next. The Jays, they are obviously protected. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, obviously protected. I think some of their other key rotation pieces, I think Neemias Queta would be protected. Sam Hauser, he would be protected. Once you get to that, then those are the 6. And you could say all 6 of them are obvious. We don't need to talk about them. Then the question is, where do you give the last 2 spots to? And with all the young guys they have, Hugo Gonzalez, Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, Luka Garza, maybe isn't the youngest player. But how do you split those 4 when you only have 2 spots? And I think Hugo Gonzalez has played his way pretty clearly into one of those. I think he's going to be protected. And then I'm going to give the last spot to Baylor Shireman. You could argue it should be Jordan Walsh. I think those would be the last 2 for me. But Baylor Shireman's been solid. He's been getting more minutes recently for Boston. So I think as of right now, he gets protected. Jordan Walsh on the outside looking in. We'll talk more about the players who aren't protected in part 2. Jordan Walsh would be an intriguing piece for me. Brooklyn Nets up next. Obvious ones, Michael Porter Jr. Despite the contract, he's a lock. Nick Claxton is a lock for me. The 2 best young players, Yegor Demon, Nolan Traore, 2 locks for me. Brooklyn is tough because they don't have any unrestricted free agents. And that's kind of the case for young teams. When you just have a lot of young players under contract, you're going to have a lot of tough decisions. And with only 4 spots left, this makes it kind of difficult. But to me, there's kind of a nice cutoff. Day'Ron Sharpe has looked good. He's still really young, has potential. I think they protect him. And then I have them protecting all 3 of the other rookies they have. Drake Powell, Ben Surratt, Danny Wolf. I've talked about it in other videos. A little bit of a hit and miss season for the rookies. I think the success of Demon and Traore have made this a solid draft class. Danny Wolf also has had some success. Drake Powell, Ben Surratt are more projects and haven't had a lot of opportunity, but they are rookies. And I think they, at this point, protect all of them. It will be a tough decision come a couple years down the road when all these guys may have improved, and you've got a lot of decisions to make. But for now, I think they protect all of them. They protect some of their veterans. That leaves Noah Clowney unprotected. He was the one that I really wanted to protect as well, but he's on the outside looking in. The Chicago Bulls are up next. Some of these teams are going to be hard. You can imagine the Oklahoma City Thunder is going to be hard. And then some teams are going to be hard for different reasons. And that's because it's kind of a struggle to get to 8 players. And no offense to the Chicago Bulls, but I think they're one of them. They do have some pretty clear locks. Obviously, Josh Giddey, Matos Buzelis, talked about them. They are the future. Trey Jones, I think, is a lock. Based on his contract, how he's played, he's a lock for me. The rest are up for debate. A couple guys, I think, would just be locks just based on not much else on this roster. Noah Senge hasn't really done anything, but he's young enough. They protect him. Rob Dillingham, they protect just because why not? He's still young. Want to give him more of a shot. Leonard Miller, same thing. He's been around a little bit, but he's young enough. They protect him. And then we're almost just going into who do you not want to protect? And we're going to go backwards a little bit. Patrick Williams, I don't think they protect. And so then if you're doing the math, you only have one player you can't protect. And I have 3 players. I have Isaac Okoro, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Smith. You can pick 2 of those 3. And like I said, it's kind of hard the other way. Don't really know if I need to protect any of them. I'm going to protect Jaden Ivey. I really liked Ivey coming out of college. I thought he had like superstar potential. Hasn't been the case. Some of that is him. Some of that is just injury. But I think you still protect him. I don't know what they do with him. He's going into restricted free agency, but you might as well protect him. He has at least the most potential out of all 3 of these guys. And then I'm going to protect Isaac Okoro. He's been fine. Hasn't lived up to his draft status, but he's been fine. And if you want to pick Jalen Smith, you can. Not a big deal either way for me. So those are the 8 for Chicago. Next up is Charlotte. Pretty clear locks. We're going to protect 4 of the 5 starters. LaMelo, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Moussa Diabate. You could say Miles Bridges as a lock just due to his age, just due to other stuff that he has kind of going for him. I'm not going to put him as a lock, but I do think they protect him. He would be the 5th. So then that leaves 3 spots for the rest. And similar to Chicago, we're going to kind of work backwards. I don't think Josh Green or Grant Williams get protected. They're not on bad contracts, but they're quote unquote vets at this point. I don't think they need to be protected. Same thing with Pat Connaughton. Don't think he gets protected. So then between pretty much your young guys, you've got 3 protections for 5 players. And to me, 2 of the spots are going to go to Ryan Kalkbrenner and Sion James. 2 young pieces, been key off the bench for them. I think those are pretty clear protections. And then you could argue maybe a Liam McNeely. You could throw him in there as well. But I'm going to do Tijan Salone, who's maybe a year ago I would not have protected because it just looked like he was a bust, wasn't going to work. But he's been showing a little bit more promise. And he's still young enough that he's still got potential. So I think he gets that 8 spot. Liam McNeely on the outside looking in. Cleveland Cavaliers, this is a pretty easy one because, they've got a couple key pieces that are unrestricted free agents, and I'm going to lock up most of the 8. I think the starting 5 you could lock up, depending on who's in that starting 5. You could also lock up Sam Merrill. You could also lock up Jalen Tyson. Those are the key 7. They're all young enough and on good enough contracts. You're protecting all of them. I don't think that's up for debate. So then basically the question is, do you protect Schroeder, who you just brought in, or do you protect one of your younger players? And I'm going to go with Tyrese Proctor as that last spot. Poor Dennis Schroeder is just on the outside looking in. Tyrese Proctor, I liked at Duke. Has looked okay with Cleveland. I think enough to earn that spot. You can make the case Cleveland just wants to keep their core together right now and protect Schroeder, but I think Proctor gets that last spot. Next up, Dallas Mavericks. Cooper Flag. He's obviously a lock. You could argue he's the only one, but I do think there are a few others. Najee Marshall, PJ Washington, a couple of vets. Max Christie, I think, is a lock. And I put Kyrie down as a lock. You could argue based on his age, injury, and contract, he shouldn't be, but they're not leaving him unprotected. I don't think it's worth more conversation than that. And then to fill the last 3 spots, we're going to work backwards again. Don't think Klay Thompson gets protected. We can talk more about him in the draft if it's worth another team picking him. Don't think they protect him at this point. Don't think they protect Caleb Martin for similar reasons. So then you've only got one left. Derek Lively, Unless Dallas was like, yeah, the medical stuff on his foot is really bad, he may never play again, I think you protect him. And you could argue you cannot protect him, and then that would signal to the other teams he's just not worth picking. But for now, we're going to protect him. We're going to protect Daniel Gafford. I think his style of center is still valuable enough. Maybe not on this Dallas team, but I think they could get something for him on the trade market that I think they protect him. And then Ryan Nembhard is going to get the last spot over AJ Johnson. He's been a good player, and he just signed a regular contract. Is he going to turn into, a big time piece for them? Who knows? But he's been nice in a kind of not so good year for Dallas. Denver is up next. Pretty clear locks. Obviously, Jokic and Murray, Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson. He's a restricted free agent, but he's pretty clearly a lock. So then the final two spots is basically what young guy do you want? Because I'm not going to protect Valanciunas. I'm not going to protect Zeke Naji. You're basically picking between Deron Holmes, Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, Spencer Jones. Those four. And if I'm Denver right now, obviously this can change over the next couple of years, but I'm protecting the guys that are playing the best right now and are the most impactful. And to me, that's Jalen Pickett and Spencer Jones. Last year, maybe 2 years ago, Julian Strawther would be on that list. I think those two have overpassed him. And then Deron Holmes, still young, still a nice piece. We've just barely seen him play. So I think pretty clearly Jalen Pickett, Spencer Jones get those last two spots. Detroit Pistons, Cade Cunningham, obviously a lock. I'm going to lock up Dennis Jenkins as well. He's been the other key guard for them on his contract. I think it's clear. Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, all the other young guys, those are all locked for me. So we've only got 2 spots left. And as we've been doing for a lot of these teams, working backwards, Karis LeVert, I don't think he gets protected. So I'm going to protect Duncan Robinson instead. You could argue veteran player on not a bad contract, but a little bit of a big contract isn't worth protecting. But I think he's been valuable for Detroit. I don't think they'd want to lose him. And then I'm going to go one spot for young players, and I'm going to give that to Marcus Sasser, another player I really liked in college. Kind of fits in with what Detroit likes to do. So to me, he gets that last spot over guys like Bobby Klintman, Chaz Lanier. He's just shown more, and just personally, I liked more in college, so I'm going to give him that last spot. Next up, Golden State. We can start with the locks. Steph Curry, obviously a lock. Draymond is a lock. You could argue he shouldn't be, but he's going to be. Moses Moody, I think is still a lock. We just saw a pretty graphic knee injury for him. You could say that maybe that takes him off, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll lock him. Brandon Pajemski, I think, is a lock. Gui Santos, I think, has played himself into a lock. So then that leaves 3 spots, and I'm going to essentially take the 3 young guys. I think Golden State needs youth, and they need to start prioritizing youth. And so I think Jimmy Butler doesn't get protected. Al Horford doesn't get protected. I think those 2 are obvious. I don't think DeAnthony Melton would get protected. That one you can make the case for. But to me, it's going to go for the other 3 young guys. Quentin Post, Will Richard, Pat Spencer. All 3 have shown flashes at times. I think they're all worth protecting and just really starting this youth movement for Golden State, which they just need to do at this point. Next up, Houston Rockets. Durant, Şengün, they are locks. A lot of their core younger pieces, Jabari Smith, Reed Shepard, Tari Eason, obviously Amen Thompson as well. So then that only leaves 2 spots left, but Houston is kind of one of the easier teams to do because once you lock up those 6, that's kind of the 6 you need or the 6 you want. The rest are just veterans. And because there's not a lot of spots or not a lot of players left that you really need, I think Fred VanVleet gets protected. Typically, someone his age coming off an injury, you could argue no, but it's been kind of clear they need him. So we're going to have Fred VanVleet stay protected. And then to me, the case is between Steven Adams and Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm going to give the edge to Dorian Finney-Smith. I get it hasn't been a good year. He didn't play for a lot of the start of the year due to injury. He's a good player, and I think he's better than he's shown. He's on, yes, a not so great contract if he's going to play like this, but he is going to play better, or he is a better player than he's shown. So I think that gives him the edge over Steven Adams. Steven Adams also now out due to injury. You could argue either one. You could argue neither, but I think they protect DFS as that last spot. Indiana Pacers, the core is going to be locked up. Tyrese, Pascal Siakam, Zubats, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith. I think that's part of it. So then you got 3 spots left. One of them I'm going to give to Jay Huff. I think he's played himself into it. on a really cheap contract. Everywhere he's gone, he's been good. Indiana's just finally giving him a shot. I'm going to give one of the spots to TJ McConnell. When I did this last year, it was a debate because, again, due to his age, really where he's at in his career, you really don't protect guys like that. But he meant so much last year that I had to protect him. And I'm going to protect him again this year. I think he just means too much to Indiana. So then that leaves one spot for, I'm going to say a young guy, and I'm going to give it to Jarris Walker. He had a lot of potential. I believed in him coming out of Houston. I thought he was going to be a good player. Hasn't necessarily shown it, but is still young enough, still has the potential. I think you protect him over guys like Ben Shepherd, over guys like Johnny Furphy, who we just haven't really seen on the court as much. Obi Toppin, he gets left off in this scenario too, but I think those are the 8 that Indiana picks. LA Clippers are next, and they're going to be one we kind of do backwards, but let's cross off the easy ones. Kawhi is going to be protected. Darius Garland would be protected. Ben Mathurin, he would be protected as well. Those would be the 3 locks for me. A lot of players the Clippers would not protect, and we can go backwards. Bradley Beal, not being protected at all. He's also not being picked, but he's just not being protected. Bogdanovich, I don't think is protected. Brook Lopez, Batum aren't going to be protected. So once you kind of get rid of all the old players they have, there's really not much else, or there's not much of a decision to make. It's 6 guys for 5 spots. Yannick Konan-Niederhauser, I think is the best young player, or at least the young player that I like the most. He's going to be protected. Jordan Miller has shown out a little bit more. He's a little bit older now. Think of him as young, but he's now not young anymore. But I think he would be protected. Same thing with Kobe Sanders. I would protect him as well. Derrick Jones Jr., just based on spots, I think they give him one of those spots. And then Isaiah Jackson. He's going to be my pick over Cam Christie. Brought him over in the trade. I think there's something there. I haven't seen too much out of Cam Christie that makes me really want to protect him, even though he is young. So I'm going to give that last spot to Isaiah Jackson. It's a lot of ifs and a lot of young players that you're just kind of now seeing for the first time on the Clippers. But a lot of them are going to be protected because you're not going to protect all these vets. So an interesting kind of team to look at and just an interesting team in general. But I think those are the 8 they protect. And now the Lakers, I'm just going to have 2 locks. It's Luka and it's Austin Reeves. LeBron, not eligible. After that, I don't really know where you go, but I'm going to protect Marcus Smart. He's been really valuable. He's kind of rejuvenated himself. I think you lock him. You're going to lock Jake LaRavia. He's been solid, a little bit up and down for the Lakers, but again, this is a team that not a lot of players that are worth protecting, so you can kind of easily protect some of these guys. Yes, I am going to protect Bronny James. I'm also going to protect Adu Thero. I'm not protecting Bronny because it's Bronny and it's LeBron's son. I'm mainly protecting him along with Adu Thero because those are kind of the 2 young players you have. And on a team that doesn't have a lot of tough decisions to make, I think those are 2 obvious protections. Yes, Bronny James is still young, still has potential. I don't want to get into it more. I've spent other videos talking about it. I'm going to protect DeAndre Ayton. Again, this is just might as well. He's been fine. I don't think he's on the Lakers next year, though. Then really the last spot is going to go to Dalton Knecht or Jared Vanderbilt. I'm going to give it to Dalton Knecht. These are 2 guys that I think the Lakers have tried to trade the last year or so. Knecht is probably not going to be a Laker next year. I think I can almost certainly say that. The only reason I'm going to give it to him is because in an expansion draft, somebody might pick him because he still has the shooting capability. He's still sort of young and hasn't really shown a ton that some team might take him. Jared Vanderbilt, just due to the contract and where he's at in his career, I don't think gets taken, but the Lakers give him as an option and protect Knecht at that last spot. Memphis Grizzlies, we're going to go through locks and then we're going to get to a pretty fun conversation. They're going to lock up most of their young core. Zach Edey, Cedric Coward. Those are 2 of their bigger pieces. Cam Spencer has played well. Jalen Wells has played well. Ty Jerome has played himself into a lock. Came over from Cleveland this year. Got hurt, didn't play a lot this year, but he's looked good in limited time. And then Salty Aldama. Still one of the just most consistent Grizzlies. I think he's a clear lock. So that's a pretty quick 6. And if you want to argue a couple of them, you can. but I think that's a pretty clear 6. So that means you only have 2 spots left. And you still have some good young players available. You still have some vets. And you still have Ja Morant. And I'm not going to spend that much time talking about this because, yes, this isn't going to matter 2 years down the road when it actually could happen. But because we are in this hypothetical world of an expansion draft happening now, we do have to have the conversation. Would Ja Morant be protected? He's on a not so good contract, $40 million plus the next couple of years. He doesn't play. He's a headache, it seems like, to have on your team. And yet he's a former top pick. He's a former really top player in the league, or top young rising star in the league. And yet I don't think Memphis takes him. I think the last 2 years have been so bad that he's essentially lost all his trade value. I do think Memphis trades him this offseason regardless, and they probably don't really get anything for him. The hope now is you can kind of dump his contract without having to give anything back. Maybe you get a couple things, couple smaller pieces, but I think he essentially has 0 trade value. And so when we're talking about expansion and we're comparing the two, I think guys that are younger and have some potential are more valuable to Memphis than Ja Morant is right now. And so because of that, we are going to leave him off and give the last 2 spots to younger players. I debated it. It is hard to leave Ja Morant, just seeing that name unprotected. And it is going to be a conversation we'll have in part 2 of this expansion draft of whether or not a team actually picks him. Does Seattle or Vegas take the risk? But I don't think Memphis really needs or wants him right now. So I think they'd leave him unprotected. The 2 young players I'm going to give those spots to are G.G. Jackson and Omax, Olivier Maxence Prosper. I really like Walter Clayton. I liked him a lot coming out of Florida. I like Scottie Pippen Jr. He showed a lot. But there's just too many young players on this Memphis team that you can't protect them all. Another team that just doesn't have any unrestricted free agents. So it makes it kind of tough. A couple young guys that I like. Taylor Hendricks also left unprotected in this scenario. But just too many players to get protected for Memphis. Miami Heat, they are obviously protecting Bam Adebayo. They are protecting Jaime Jaquez, Kelal Ware. I think Davion Mitchell is a lock. I'm going to protect him as well. The question for Miami would be Andrew Wiggins and Tyler Hero. And I'm going to just say straight off the bat, I think they protect both. But there is a big conversation to have. At the contracts they are at, and they're both in 30 millions next year, is it worth keeping them? And is it worth losing somebody and some of their younger players in order to protect them? Because if you protect them, which I am going to do, you only have 2 spots left. And after that, I think it's pretty clear you got to protect Kaspers Jakubonis, your rookie this past year, and then Pelle Larsson, who's been really your best young player out of this little core. So then is the question, would you rather protect Nikola Jovic, who I've never been a huge fan of? Yes, he still has some potential, but I've never been a huge fan. Do you protect a guy like Keshad Johnson over a Tyler Hero or Andrew Wiggins? And I did debate it. I did consider it. And I think a lot of people would say that would happen. But this is where I get to. At some point, yes, age, contract, all of that matter. But at some point, really, would the Heat want to keep Jovic, who is no guarantee to really turn into anything? And pretty soon he's going to get into a contract that is going to basically need him to be at least a solid role player over someone like a Tyler Hero or an Andrew Wiggins, who we know at a minimum is a good NBA rotation player. This is where the gap to me is too much. I think Tyler Hero, Andrew Wiggins get protected. I think they get in that top 8. Milwaukee, Giannis, he's obviously protected while he's still there. AJ Green, Bobby Portis, 2 solid players for Milwaukee these last couple of years. They get protected. Kevin Porter Jr. and Ryan Rollins also get protected pretty clearly. After that, there's not much else really to consider, at least for me. I don't think Kyle Kuzma gets protected. I don't think some of their vets get protected as well. So I'm going to give the last spots to Gary Trent. I'm going to give a spot to Ousmane Dieng, finally in a position where he can learn and grow, unlike OKC. And then I'm going to give it to Miles Turner. If you really want to protect maybe a Jericho Sims, if you want to protect Kyle Kuzma, Miles Turner is a pretty good candidate not to get protected just due to his contract and where he's at. But Milwaukee doesn't have a ton else, so I have him on the 8. Minnesota, Anthony Edwards, obviously protected. All of their core, Dante DiVincenzo, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, all protected. I think they also protect 2 of their younger players. Terrence Shannon Jr., I get, isn't super young now at this point, but I've liked him. I think they protect him. And they protect Johan Behringer, who is young, has a ton of potential, and could be the successor to Rudy Gobert. And I've liked the minutes he's given this year, despite really no expectations for this year. So I think those 2 are clear protections as well. So then the question is, do you protect Julius Randle or not? Same conversation I had with Miami. I think the alternative would be someone like a Jalen Clark. And nice player. If you want to bring him back, he's a restricted free agent. That's solid. And maybe he has a bigger ceiling than I think. But at some level, I'd rather just take the more proven player. I don't think he's on a negative contract. I don't think he has like really bad value as compared to someone like a Bradley Beal. So I think he's kind of like an average contract. Probably doesn't have a ton of trade value. But at some point, I'm protecting the good player of Julius Randle than I am Jalen Clark. Some people, that's going to be obvious. Some people would disagree. But I think that's where I stand. New Orleans Pelicans up next. I think Zion has played himself into a lock. I don't think we really have to talk about him now. Then they're going to protect a lot of their young players. Derek Queen, Jeremiah Fears. They're going to protect Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, some of their mainstays. After that, you could put some up for debate. I think the next one for me would be Sadiq Bey. I do think he gets protected. Yi Misi would also get protected for me. I kind of hope they trade him this offseason. I would like to see him in a bigger role. I mean, New Orleans has been playing some DeAndre Jordan minutes over him. Not saying he's the greatest center, but I still think he has potential. I'd like to see him somewhere else. And then after that, this is another one of those teams that not a ton left to choose from. So you can really go lots of ways. I'm not going to protect Jordan Poole. I'm not going to protect Kevon Looney. I am going to protect another veteran. I am going to protect DeJounte Murray. And I wouldn't have done that last year. I don't think I even would have done that a few months ago. But the fact that he's came back, he's looked decent coming back from his Achilles. And he has come out and said that he cares about New Orleans. And he came back and said, hey, we don't have a draft pick. Hey, no, none of this tanking, none of this, oh, I'm on a bad team, I don't want to play. He wanted to come back. He wanted to come back this season despite his Achilles injury. And I think for those reasons, as silly as they may sound to some people, I think that's reason to protect him. He wants to be here. He wants to compete. And for bad teams like New Orleans, you need players like that. You need good players, maybe not on the best of contracts, maybe not the youngest players, but you need players who are going to care. And I think DeJounte Murray fits that role. If they had another maybe younger player, guy with potential that I really liked, I would pick them over him. But someone like a Jordan Hawkins, I just don't really see much at this point. So I'm going to give that last spot to DeJounte Murray. New York Knicks, they were going to protect, obviously, their starting five. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. You could argue based on contract, but they're going to protect those five. Then the last three spots, what bench guys / young players do you protect? I'm going to give one spot to Miles McBride. He's shown enough over a couple years that he's going to get protected. I'm going to give one of the spots to Mo Diarra. Kind of came out of nowhere, but he's getting real minutes. And yes, it looks kind of funky at times. And yes, results haven't always been there. But you can see the potential. And because he's young, because he's only a rookie, I think they give him one spot. And then I'm going to give the last spot to Tyler Kolek. There is a chance, maybe they protect the Jose Alvarado. I think Tyler Kolek, while he's kind of fallen out of the rotation, has had enough moments that he is worth protecting. And unless you really like the potential of maybe a Daddier, maybe a Huck Porty, I think Tyler Kolek just by default kind of gets that 8th spot. So those would be the 8 for me for New York. And then we get to the most fun team and the team that is going to be the most discussed, not just because of their relation to Seattle, but because of all the potential and all the pieces they have. As you can see, as of right now, they have no unrestricted free agents. And again, in a couple of years, this is going to change. But in this hypothetical scenario, they would have a lot of tough decisions. So let's start with the obvious. I think really the only 3 pure locks are their quote unquote big 3, Chet, Jalen Williams, SGA. No need to have a conversation. Then you have 5 spots left, and really anybody on this list, you can make an argument for. Like, I don't think there's a way to work backwards and say, well, you wouldn't protect this player, you wouldn't protect that player. Like, if I'm working backwards, I guess my first pick or the last pick, I guess, maybe someone like a Kenrich Williams, even though he's been a solid player. You could argue maybe a Lou Dort, just based on how he's played in his contract, but I don't think even that's a clear, like, yep, we're not going to protect him. I think if you talk to a lot of OKC fans, you're going to get a bunch of different results. You're going to get a lot of different lists of 8. So I'm going to give my list. It's probably going to be different. You can let me know down in the comments. After the 3, I think the next kind of clear picks are Case and Wallace. I think you're not going to see many lists without Case and Wallace. I don't think you're going to see a lot of lists without AJ Mitchell, just due to his contract, and he's played really well. So now we're up to 5. I think Jared McCain has played himself into one of the spots. So now we're at 6. For me, now the last 2 spots, you could go young, Nikola Topic, Thomas Sorber. Barely seen much of either of them. Haven't seen anything of Thomas Sorber. So you could go one of those. But instead, I'm going to go with trying to just keep the Thunder as much intact as we can. So I'm going to go Isaiah Hartenstein, who has been a key piece ever since they brought him in. And then I'm going to go Aaron Wiggins as my last spot. On a good contract, been a solid player. Yes, maybe the potential of a couple other players are bigger, but I know what I get out of Aaron Wiggins, and he's on a really good contract. So those would be my 8. That means no Alex Caruso. That means no Isaiah Joe, no Jalen Williams, plus the 2 young guys that I talked about, plus Kenrich Williams, plus Lou Dort. OKC is really the main recipient of the rule, only one player gets picked. Because if not, a lot of these players would get picked. But you can only lose one. So if they lose Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. If they lost Isaiah Joe, that would suck for their shooting, but they'd be fine. If they lost Caruso or Dort, same thing for their defense, they'd be fine. I do think when we actually get to the expansion draft, and I'm not going to go through all of this now, but when we get to the actual expansion draft, when we start to predict that, the Thunder are going to be one of those teams that maybe trade some of their picks in order for the team not to select them. And we'll get into some specifics on if that could happen. But there's just too many good players for the Thunder to protect. Next up is Orlando. They're going to protect their starting 5. All have played well, or all are on contracts they are deserving of, that you're going to protect those 5. I'm going to protect Wendell Carter. Been a solid player for them for a while. I think he gets protected. And then I'm going to protect their 2 young guys, Tristan Da Silva and Jace Richardson. And that's pretty quickly 8 spots. Jonathan Isaac, he's not going to get protected. Gogo Batadze could be a nice pick in the expansion draft, but I don't think he gets protected. And then the 2 young players I like just kind of push Noah Penda out. So kind of a clear 8 for Orlando. Not too much to talk about. Next up is Philly, and only 2 locks for me. It's Tyrese Maxey, it's VJ Edgecombe. After that, a lot of interesting conversations. And to me, it's kind of like some of the other teams where I got to kind of work to get to 8 protections. And that's because I'm not going to protect Paul George. I didn't protect him last year. I don't think they protect him this year. And I'm not going to protect Joel Embiid. You could make the case that Paul George will get picked. I picked him last year in the expansion draft. Don't know if I'll pick him this year, but we'll talk about that in part 2. I don't see a world where anybody picks Joel Embiid. Yes, maybe you could argue like a Vegas wants that big star. I mean, at his contract and the thought that he just might never play again at some point, I don't think he gets picked. And I don't think the 76ers protect him. So without those 2, you got 6 spots left. You got 7 players. I'm not going to protect Cameron Payne. He just came in. He's a restricted free agent, so he's technically eligible. But I'm going to just protect everybody else. And I don't know if I need to protect some of these guys, but I can. So might as well. So those would be my 8. Unless you want to protect Joel Embiid, unless you want to protect Paul George, I don't think it's that much of a conversation. Phoenix is up next. Devin Booker, obviously a lock. Dylan Brooks to me is a lock. Mark Williams, I think, is a lock for me too, even though he's a restricted free agent. And then a couple of their rookies. Kaman Malawach, Rasheer Fleming are both locks for me. Then the conversation is going to be really around one player for me. And I didn't have him protected at first. Then I changed my mind. I am going to protect Jalen Green. You're going to have a lot of people that don't protect him. He's owed, $30+ million the next 2 years. He's not the most efficient player. He's not, I think, a winning player at this point. But he is still young enough. And you just traded Kevin Durant for him, which I get not just for him. And maybe they liked getting rid of Kevin Durant. But still, he was the main-ish part in the Kevin Durant trade. I don't think they would leave him unprotected at this point. Now, yes, maybe in 2 years they would, depending on how the next 2 years go. But at this point, I just can't unprotect him. I do think if he's left unprotected, I do think Seattle or Vegas would take him. And I've seen a lot of mock expansion drafts out there with him being one of the first picks. I just don't see it. If I'm Phoenix, I would protect him just due to the fact that this could turn into something really good. I get it's not looking like that. and I get the probability of that is probably not great at this point, but the potential is way too much. I am not just going to give him up for nothing. And so with that, I only have 2 spots left. I'm going to give it to the 2 sophomores, Oso Ighodaro, Ryan Dunn. I liked them last year. They were kind of nice young pieces that came out of a not so good Phoenix season. A little bit overshadowed by some other players this year, but I still think worth protecting. They're on cheap contracts. I think they get protected over some veterans like a Grayson Allen, who would be kind of my 9th person. Royce O'Neal, another option, but I think they go young, and I think they keep Jalen Green, which is the key. Portland, their locks, Denny Avdia, obviously a lock. Donovan Clingan is an obvious lock. Their young guard, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharper locks. Toumani Camara is a lock for me. Once you get those 5 out of the way, you got 3 spots left. You really then got to decide, what do you do with the veterans? Dame is not going to be protected, and I don't think he gets picked. And I don't know, this could be one of those that's like, he doesn't get protected. Maybe there's some like under the table thing that says, hey, like just don't pick him. He's on a declining contract, so it wouldn't be as bad in a few years, but I don't know. He's Portland. He's older. He's coming off an Achilles. I don't see either team picking him. So I don't think you have to protect him. If for whatever reason he was going to be picked, Portland, I think, just protects him out of just honoring him. He's, I think, the Portland Trailblazer at this point in his career. But I don't think they protect him. I do think they would protect Drew Holiday. I'm going to give him one of the 8 protections over Jeremy Grant. I do think Drew Holiday has more to give at this point. I think he's a more valuable player. And then I'm going to give the last 2 spots to younger guys, because I said Jeremy Grant, not going to be an option for me. I'm going to give it to Vit Krejci, not necessarily young anymore, but a good role player. They just brought him in, gives them some more outside shooting. And then the last spot goes to Young Hansen, who hasn't really done much in Portland, but he's a rookie with a lot of potential. I think they protect him. So those are the 8. No Damian Lillard, but again, I don't think he gets taken. Sacramento, I think they're kind of the opposite of Oklahoma City, where it's like, I don't really know if I need 8. And Sacramento's probably like, please take multiple of these players. And so because of that, not a ton of locks, but they do have a few. I think Keegan Murray's still a lock. Maxine Reynaud and Neek Clifford, I've talked about them. 2 nice bright spots, 2 nice rookies in a not so good season. After that, we're going to work backwards. Killian Hayes is technically eligible. We're not protecting him. We're not going to protect Zach LaVine. Try to convince Seattle to bring him back home. Again, we'll talk about that when he gets there. And we're not going to protect DeMar DeRozan. Might be a nice veteran for one of those teams, but just based on contract and age and just ability for both of them at this point, I don't think LaVine or DeRozan get protected. They are going to protect Sabonis, who I still think is a more valuable player. And that's also because everyone else I haven't mentioned gets protected. I've now run out of players I can't protect. So no LaVine, no DeRozan, no Killian Hayes. You can protect everybody else. And yeah, some players you might want to protect, but also just not a good roster for Sacramento. But we all knew that going in. San Antonio is next. Very different from Sacramento, which we just did. Victor Wembanyama, you are obviously protecting. Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, you were protecting them. Devin Vassell, I think he's a lock as well. I didn't lock De'Aaron Fox, but I am going to protect him. There's an argument to be made just based on contract. You don't protect him, but you obviously are going to protect him, at least at this point. I'm going to give Carter Bryant one of the other protections. Kind of similar to Dylan Harper. Doesn't have a big role. Could use a bigger role. I think he could do a lot with a big role, but he's still a really good player that I like. So a clear protection for Carter Bryant. So then that leaves 2 protections for 3 quote unquote veterans. Julian Champagnie, Keldon Johnson, Luke Cornett. I'm going to give the last 2 spots to Keldon Johnson and Julian Champagnie. I'm going to leave Luke Cornett unprotected. I do think he would be a good pick in an expansion draft. Keldon Johnson, he's been a San Antonio Spur for a while. He's evolved into a really nice role for them, so I think he gets protected. So then the question is, Luke Cornett's skill set or Julian Champagnie's skill set more valuable, and more valuable specifically to the Spurs? Cornett, I think, has been valuable to the Spurs, but I do think it's easier for them to find a big to replace him than someone like Julian Champagnie, who is on a really cheap contract next year, gives them shooting, gives them some just nice effort on the wing. And I think he would be harder to replace than Cornett. But I do think both are valuable. Tough decision for San Antonio. Next up, Toronto, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Colin Murray Boyles gets one of my locks. Jakob Poeltl, I think, is a lock. I didn't lock RJ Barrett. I I do think it might be worth a conversation, but I am going to protect him. I am going to protect Jacoby Walter, who I think looks pretty good. Still young, still has a lot more to give. I'm going to protect Grady Dick. You could argue maybe he doesn't deserve it at this point, but I do think he does. So that gives me 7 spots. Me personally, I'm going to protect Jamal Shead. I think he fits in with what Toronto wants to do. I've liked him ever since he's been in college. He's, again, not one of those guys that I think is going to grow into a huge star, but a really good player to have on your team. So I'm going to protect him. I particularly didn't protect Emmanuel Quickley. And some people will have him, but for the contract he's on, I don't think he's worth it. And I think he's one of those players that Toronto, at his price, would be willing to let go. We'll have the conversation if a team will select him or not, but I don't think he gets protected. Utah Jazz, I think they got a good amount of locks, starting with Ace Bailey, all the way through Jaren Jackson Jr., Larry Markkinen, Keontae George, Walker Kessler, even though he's a restricted free agent. So after those 5, you only got 3 left. I think Isaiah Collier has played himself into a spot on a cheap contract in the next couple of years. Same thing with Kyle Filipowski, also on a cheap contract. So then to me, the debate is Bryce Sensabaugh versus Cody Williams. Cody Williams, a year ago, looked like one of the worst NBA players, looked like a bust based on where they picked him. He has looked a lot better, so I do think this is a conversation, but I'm going to protect Bryce Sensabaugh at this point. He has shown more. He is, to me, has a higher ceiling than Cody Williams does at this point, or at least a more likelihood of getting to that ceiling. Cody Williams, you could argue, has the higher ceiling, but I think Bryce Sensabaugh is just the better player right now and has the best potential to grow into something that Utah could build around. So Bryce Sensabaugh gets the pick and gets that last spot over Cody Williams. And then that brings us to our final team, the Washington Wizards. They're going to protect all their young guys. Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, Will Riley. All 5 aren't up for debate. After that, then you have to have the conversation. What do you do with Anthony Davis and Trae Young? And I'm going to protect both. Yes, there are going to be people out there that say that's crazy, that they don't need to protect them. They are still worth something. And if they don't get protected, I do think one of the teams would pick them, specifically Anthony Davis. If Washington had a lot of other young players to protect, I think it's a better case. But after those 5, I don't think I'd rather have anybody else than those 2, despite their contract, despite their age. So those 2 get protected for me. And then that leaves 1 spot. And I'm going to give it to Justin Champagnie. Gave it to his brother with San Antonio. I think both of them are just good players to have on your team. And those are 2 that would be nice expansion draft picks, but I don't think they get that far. I think Washington takes Justin Champagnie over a Bub Carrington, over a Cam Whitmore, a Jameer Watkins, Jaden Hardy. A lot of interesting players for Washington, but I don't know if any of them are really going to turn out to anything. Someone like a Justin Champagnie on the contract he's on, I think it was too valuable. So he gets that 8th and final spot for Washington. So that does it for all 30 teams, 8 protections for every team in this hypothetical mock draft that is happening this offseason. As I mentioned at the top, I'm going to be doing a part 2 to this video. I knew this one was just going to be super long, so we got to split it into 2 parts. I'm going to do the draft next, probably closer to the offseason. How do you draft the players that weren't protected for these 2 expansion teams? Again, if the draft was happening now, which I get isn't going to happen. But as I said last year, every single year, I'm going to be doing a mock expansion draft until we get to the real one. So if you want to see part 2, if you want to see future mock expansion drafts, if you want to see lots of other stuff I do on this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got lots more coming throughout the summer, both on NBA and lots of other sports. So hit that like button, subscribe for future videos, and we will see you for part 2.